One thing I just realized
Yeah.
when you're talking about how when someone's natural and comfortable, there's a certain way that they speak and deliver and communicate. I realized that this is the dynamic behind a lot of podcasts today, where you have a few, I'm just going to say, guys broing out.
Yeah.
And, and it's somewhat compelling because they're communicating very naturally. But then you stick someone behind a podium, it's like a completely different animal.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we're talking about here is like podium appropriate because you might be speaking professionally.
Yeah.
And what you try to do is you try and get us back to our state of nature.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. So part of why people like the Broing Out podcast is because people use a bigger bandwidth of themselves to communicate.
Yes.
And we do this in real life. So you can even look at
Yes.
vocal variety, which is what you and I are using right now for a whole bunch of really smart purposes, like to surprise an audience, to help them understand meaning, et cetera, et cetera. And then you go to the podium and the typical speaker contracts all vocal variety like that.
It becomes sort of monotonous.
Completely.
And the vocal variety piece was something that I also really benefited from.
There's a story from the campaign. Do you remember we were in Iowa and you had a big speech at this thing that was going to make a splash? We practiced a bunch for that. And you were sandwiched between, I think it was Amy and then Mayor Pete was coming up after you, and you killed. And a lot of what we worked on was that very, and I'll do it now so you can actually hear it. Because the first time you're doing a speech, the speech pretty much consisted, and I'll just make some sounds right now, pretty much consisted right here the entire time, no matter what. Now, I'm giving you like a characterization of it, okay?
I remember the Iowa build-up.
Yeah.
I remember that event.
And then we actually worked so that everything that you said had a build to it. So you were almost like at a rock concert or rallying an audience, that your voice was all of a sudden had peaks and valleys and all kinds of stuff. And you killed in that situation. It was the best speech of the night.
I remember that vividly. It was an interesting environment too because the stage was round.
Yeah.
And so you would just be talking and, it was like walking around circles. And I spoke after Joe Biden, who, by the way, was terrible.
Yeah, terrible.
Because that setting.
Terrible.
You had to be pretty freaking with it to deliver. Yeah. And the team, and by the way, this is something too, where you and Zach, we really built up to that event because we're like, okay, this is going to be the chance to make a splash. Yeah. And then we realized after the fact that the press kind of had already written the story and it didn't really matter. Though you can look it up because that event, I think, was either the high point or one of the high points of the campaign in terms of delivery. And you could feel it. Like I felt it that night.
My wife Evelyn is here with us tonight. We have two young boys, Christopher and Damien, and I'm running for president because of a thought that the parents here in this room have had, but we have been afraid to express. And it is this: our kids are not all right. They are not all right because we have left them a future far darker than the lives that we have led as their parents. Experts are calling this economic transformation, this period, the fourth industrial revolution. When is the last time you heard a politician even breathe the words fourth industrial revolution? Never. Just now, right? And I am barely a politician. These are the problems that got Donald Trump elected, and this is what you must solve. This is how you must use your power.
You walked off, we gave you a huge hug, if you remember. Now, you're saying Biden, probably this whole audience is not surprised to hear that you communicated better than Joe Biden. But what you're forgetting is that Mayor Pete came right after you. Now, people right now, because of his Fox News hits and other things, people think of Mayor Pete as, very, very high on the communication sort of evaluation. You were better than he was that night by not an insignificant margin, by a lot. And a big part of that was that you were actually using your voice like an orator. And for those of you who are keeping track, we've mentioned a couple of these P's, but I've actually named this system with a 5P kind of alliterative model to help people remember it. Pace, pitch, pause, power, and placement. Pace, of course, is speed, what we were talking about. Pitch is high and low. Pause is silence. That's the wiffle ball. Power is volume, loud and quiet. And then placement means where the sound amplifies in your body. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about vocal variety and how it works, you can probably already intuit maybe some of the places in which you could improve and you could have greater fluidity with that. But here's a key thing. Everybody, you can forget that system for the rest of your life because you already know it and you know it in your bones, because we do this when we are actively trying to reach our audience. And then we forget to do it and we constrict our bandwidth, which is back to your point about the bro podosphere. It's partly why it's so effective, because people love watching people communicate in a free and natural and other focused way.
What you helped me do is adopt all these practices that made me actually feel more natural.
Yeah.
And then that ended up coming through, and then I internalized them to the point where, like you said, it's like you don't have to think about it all the time.
Yeah.
Because it becomes muscle memory.
Thank you for finishing that with those two magic words, muscle memory. You're exactly right. Now, people who are listening, you may not relate to a televised media hit, 45 seconds, whatever it is, but I promise you relate to this idea of feeling unnatural in a high-stakes communication situation, whatever it might be. And the essential thing is that you can't rely on some sort of list of mental reminders of stuff to keep in mind, because all you're doing then is making yourself have to work harder cognitively, more multitasking. You have to build muscle memory, which is why in the book, the chapter on stance, there's pages that you fold flat. There's 2 footprints. You practice standing on the book with grounded feet. The chapter on enunciation, you rip out a page, fold it up into an impediment, put the impediment in between your teeth, and practice fighting past the impediment. The one on structure and conciseness, you tear out a page, tear it up into 6 pieces, and you practice sharing one thought at a time, placing down the object and tolerating silence. Because you've got to build, just like an athlete, these muscles that you can rely on. Because in those moments, your brain, your squirrely brain, your monkey brain is going to fail you. Your body won't. And this is what performers know, athletes, dancers, singers, actors, but we don't get that training as speakers in everyday life. And that's partly, of course, why I wrote the book, because I hope people, not just like you, who are running for president and can frankly afford to, have me driving around Iowa with you, that they can pick up a book for $30 and get some version of the same thing.
Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Please do hit like and subscribe, and hit that bell if you want to be notified every time a new episode drops. Thank you.